Hi, friends. Hello, the world. Welcome back to this episode of Transitioning Tools for Transitioning Humanitarians, and your host is Solan Monova. And today I want to address one of the, excuse me, one of the objections that our brains put up a lot, especially when we're going for something new, or when we are thinking about making money, or when we're thinking about changing things, whatever it is, we have this objection that says, I have never done this before, right? And this is a topic that we were discussing in my group coaching yesterday. Excuse me. By the way, that in the group coaching, we're now working on all things related to money and all the objections that we are addressing in the group. So if you're not part of it, you should absolutely join us because we're having amazing conversations around it and also how to solve those objections, right? So this objection of I have never done this before came up a lot in our conversation yesterday. And as I said, be it in making money or be it in transitioning, whatever the topic is, we have this, our brain's default sentence or default thought that says, I've never done this before. And therefore, we don't even look at what that means and we don't really question it or we don't really decide what to do about it. And we just continue not doing the thing that we want to do. Right. So today I want to help you address this argument, this objection of our own brain, right? I want you to think about like how you can solve it. And I would like to give perspectives of how it could be solved so that you can move on to what you want to do. So there are, I feel, two ways that we can solve this objection. And one is by challenging this objection, right? And the other is by agreeing with it. And I have done it both. I have gotten coaching on this so much in the past. And the part that worked for me in addressing and solving this, I have never done this before, objection is by agreeing with it. But maybe it is different for you. So that's why I would like to elaborate all both approaches so that you can see what do I mean by it, right? So when we usually, let's say, go for a transitioning, and then our brain puts up this objection that says, well, we don't really have the money for it, or we can't really earn the money somewhere else. And then when we say, well, but I could earn it this way, I could do it this way, and then your brain says, well, I've never done this before, right? This is the typical objection that comes up. In that case, the first approach that I would suggest for you to try it out is the approach of challenging I have never done this before statement. And the way that you could challenge is you could ask yourself, okay, so what if I have never done this before? What does that mean? Just because I have never done this before does not mean I can't do it, right? That would be one way of challenging it. The other way of challenging it could be that when you ask yourself, so what you could find out is you could find out more reasons behind why your brain believes that you can't really do this, right? So it could be something like, I have never done this before, so I don't think I can do it, right? So that would be the answer to, so what question? Therefore, you could challenge it in that sentence by asking, why do you believe you can't do it? Because there are many things in the past that you have never done it, but you have done it for the first time and you were successful in it, right? So, for instance, working as a humanitarian. There was a time where you didn't know how to do it. You were a newcomer or you had no clue, but your desire, your passion probably overcame you that then you just went and figured out things out along the way. You learned a lot of things and you also were able to make it successful. So you are capable of doing that, right? So then why do you believe you can't do that with this particular topic? Let's say making money, or let's say transitioning to another field. Why do you feel this time you wouldn't be able to do that, what you have already done in the past? And then see what your brain will come up in terms of what answers your brain will give, right? Um, the the this would be like the one way that you challenge until the end, so to say. The other way that you could challenge is, so you could say, okay, so what if I have never done this before? Your brain might come up with, I believe it's hard, right? So I've never done this before, but I believe it's hard. Now, if that is the objection that you're hearing, then you can even ask yourself, okay, what does that hard mean, right? Because you're challenging your brain. Remember, this is the whole purpose of doing a self-coaching exercise, or whole purpose of really understanding all of your objections behind as to why and how. You could really start thinking about, okay, I have never done this before. And then when you challenge your own thought and say, so what? Yeah, I have never done this before. Then you could notice another objection, that is, because that's why I believe it's going to be hard. If that is the case, then you could also challenge that hard, right? You could ask yourself, what does that hard mean? Right? How does that show up? What does that exactly mean? And your brain may say something like, well, I don't know this and I don't know that. And if that is the case, you could say, well, do you want to learn those things? Right? Again, you see, you're challenging your brain further and further until you find out what the truth behind, I have never done this before. And then when you say, well, I've never done I don't know this and I don't know that. And then you ask yourself, are you willing to learn it? And your answer could be, yes, I'm willing to learn it. Or maybe, no, I don't want to learn it. Then you could again get curious as to why. Why wouldn't you want to learn it? Right? Because up to now, all the things that mattered to you that you really wanted to do, you have been able to do that. So why you wouldn't be able, or you wouldn't want to do this in this case? Right? Because then your brain may come up with another objection, which is, because I think it will take a long time, or it will not work, right? These are the other hidden objections under I have never done this before. So that's why it's great that you start understanding and uncovering layer by layer to see what other objections that come up. And in my case, it was also, it takes a long time. And then you could challenge your brain again to say, how long do you believe it takes? And why do you think it takes this long? Right? And as the more you challenge your brain around, what if it doesn't take that long? Why do you believe it takes that long? Because a lot of humanitarians that I coach tell me that, well, it took me 10 years, 20 years to make it successful. I don't want to wait another 10 or 20 years. But what I always tell them, that they already have the experience of making it successful. Once they can build on it, they don't need to start from scratch, because a lot of people believe that they need to start from scratch, and starting from scratch feels very scary for many people, and that's very understandable. So that's why, what if we didn't do it from scratch, right? What if we're able to build on what we already have and shorten the time frame of when we can make it happen. So you see that we're challenging what's coming up behind, I have never done this before, right? So another might be that comes up is, I have never done this before. And then when you challenge yourself, so what? Then the other fear you may uncover, which is, I am afraid I will fail, right? Which is something that comes up very often in many humanitarians. And if that fear is, I'm afraid I will fail, we could also challenge that fear. You could always say, how do you know you will fail? Or you could say, what happens if you fail? Then you could uncover, I don't want to feel shame. I don't want to feel guilt. I don't want to lose money or whatever opportunities, and therefore I will feel very bad about my decision. I will punish myself. I have clients who say, I hate feeling embarrassed, right? But then think about this, is that if we keep avoiding failure, if we keep avoiding that fear, that we don't want to be failing, then the opposite of that is we keep forcing ourselves to be in the environment we don't want to be. That's equally difficult and not what we want to do. So therefore, if we are afraid of failing, what we can do is, after failing, we don't need to punish ourselves. We don't need to punish ourselves with guilt and shame and all the negative self-talk of how bad we are and how irresponsible are all of those things. But instead going into, okay, how are we going to solve it going forward? And the better we get at doing it, the better we get at pursuing what we want and making it successful. Because if we're not afraid of failing, then anything that we can do, it's just a learning matter, right? So that's why notice how your brain may come up with all of these fears that your brain believes you can't handle. But again, you can challenge that as well. You can challenge, why do you believe you can't handle those fears? Because you have certainly handled those fears before. You have certainly handled failures in your humanitarian work, I'm assuming. So then why do you believe that it can't happen in this environment? So why is it that when you are transitioning, everything becomes so much more difficult or so much more unattainable, while when you are pursuing humanitarian work, it was? And my guess is because you're just not trusting yourself that you can do this. And the beautiful thing is that you always can learn and grow trust. Then the question is, how will you grow trust? Right? How will you grow trust in yourself that you can do this and you can fail and get up again and learn and then continue growing? Right? So you can see how we have, by challenging one thought, I have never done this before, we have uncovered a lot of many thoughts behind them. And not only that, we have also challenged those, and then we have started coming up or coming with answers to our own objections. And what do we do with those objections is totally up to us, right? But gaining awareness as to how we can challenge those objections, our amazing ability for us to then say, do I really want to continue thinking this way? Do I really want to continue listening to this objection? Or do I want to do something else? So that would be when we challenge that I have never done this before objection. Now let's think about how we could agree with it. Because as I said, I have in my own coaching, I have done a lot of coaching, meaning I've gotten a lot of coaching from other amazing coaches where my brain continued objecting to, I have never done this before. And therefore I can't do it kind of an argument, right? And I've challenged it in so many different ways, and somehow it didn't work, meaning I didn't feel like I was settled. And then one day, one of my amazing coaches told me that, what if you agreed with it? And that was, I think, excuse me, the best approach to take, because my brain was not really wanting to be argued against, or my brain didn't want to hear my own answers to my objections, right? And therefore, I realized that the best or the easiest approach is agreeing with it. So the way that it works is, so you say, I have never done this before, whatever it is, right? So the transitioning, the money, the new work, whatever it is, or the dating, whatever the thing that you are stopping yourself from going because you tell yourself, I've never done this before, then the agreement could sound like, yeah, you've never done this before, and that's okay. That would be agreeing with it, right? So you would agree with your objections to say, yeah, I've never done this before, and I'm okay with it. And I'm going to now do it for the first time, right? I have done this a lot with languages, is where I would start learning a language, and then my brain is like, well, I've never done this before. I have no clue, da 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 da. And then I would tell myself, it's okay that you have no clue. You will learn. It's okay that you will not know a lot of things and you will make a lot of mistakes, because that's how we learn the language, right? This is how we have learned the language all the time. So why should now learning another language be different? Right? So that's why you can think about, okay, I've never done this before. Yeah, that is true. I've never done this before. And I'm wanting to do it now. That would be agreeing. Another way of agreeing is, yes, you've never done this before, so what is the problem, right? So you could be asking yourself, agreeing, yes, acknowledging, yes, you have never done this before. Now let's think further as to why is that a problem? Why you never having done this before is a problem. And then you could start uncovering a lot of other things behind it as well. For instance, in my case, it would be, well, I don't know how to do it. And that's a very legitimate question or concern, right? I don't know how to do it. Okay. Then the answer to that is, how would you like to find out? Or what you could do to learn it, or where you could learn it, what you could learn it specifically. Now we're getting somewhere, right? So as you can see that whether we agree with our objections or we challenge them, what is important and key in the end is what do we do with this gained awareness, right? So we have gained a lot of awareness by challenging them, and I suggest you do both. But if you're someone who's like, no, I don't want to challenge myself, I'm just going to go with agreement and then deciding what to do, fine, you can do that as well. But what is important is for me, and I believe that we all need to really think about this, is do we want that to be the reason for why we're not going for what we want, right? This is really the question that I always ask myself is, do I want this, I've never done this before, be a reason for me not going to what I want? And if the answer is yes, I don't want this, or I want to just keep where I am, where I don't really want to, because I'm afraid, because I've never done this before, then you are at least honest with yourself, right? You are at least like owning it, that this is the reason why you're not going for what you want, instead of just keeping yourself away from what you want with this label of I've never done this before, without ever challenging or questioning or really understanding what's behind it. And I always want for us to make a conscious decision of, yes, this is the reason why I want to do this. This is the reason why I don't want to do this. And I'm good with my reason. I would love for everyone to make that decision, instead of just default objections that our brain runs all the time. And then we just continue believing them without ever realizing what's behind them. And without really realizing that we can actually solve for every objection that we have, instead of just keep listening to it, right? That's really the point. And therefore, I would love for you to, after gaining your awareness of answering your own questions of, okay, this is the reason, and or this is how I want to solve for it. This is how I think about it. Once you have gained the awareness of it, then make a decision. So the decision could be about, okay, I have never done this before. Therefore, I'm going to need to do these things, and I'm going to work on these or learn these and go to what I want. Or equally, the decision could be, because of these reasons that I feel that I don't want to solve for, and therefore I'm going to stay where I am now, right? So either way, make a decision, but it's important that once we have challenged ourselves, once we have agreed with ourselves, and then we have gained a lot of information around our own objections, then making a decision as to, okay, I want to go this way, I want to do this thing about this, or I want to solve it in this way, and go solve for it. And I would love to recommend that the more objections we solve in our own brains, the better we get at being in charge of our own brains and being in charge of our own emotional state, and therefore feeling freer to go for what we want. And I would love to recommend for you to experience that. And the more you experience learning how you can overcome and you can solve every objection, every argument, and answer every argument so that you continue going for what you want, is an amazing ability that we have that has such a potential to make us freer and bigger and growing in our own way of getting to what we want, I believe. So that's why I would love for you to experience that. So in the meantime, if you have any questions about it and if you want coaching on it, absolutely come to my group coaching, where we would be discussing this topic in detail and answering and challenging and coaching on this so that we no longer have any objections that stand in the way to get into what we want. So have an amazing week, and I will talk to you very soon. Thank you. Bye.